Echoes of the Veil, Episode 1, Awakening in the Veil. The first thing I felt was not fear, but weight. The air pressed against my ribs as if the world itself had forgotten how to breathe. Above me, the sky held no color, not blue, not black, just the worn gray of erased chalk. Beneath my palms, the ground looked like stone and moved like something sleeping, a single muscle twitch under a crust of rock. When I stood, the surface shivered, water pretending to be earth. The mist parted in slow sheets. Far figures drifted and unmade the fog as they passed, as if walking erased more than it revealed. My name did not arrive. My past did not arrive. Only one thread tugged behind my eyes, thin and persistent. The veil keeps those who keep themselves. At my feet, the ground was tattooed with footprints. My boots, my stride. 3 trails splitting into separate arguments with reality. I chose the one that faded the fastest. The mist closed like a curtain behind me. Breath scraped in my throat, loud because everything else refused to be. The world seemed to listen to the space between sounds, as if it trusted the silence more than me. Ridges rose and sunk like held breath. A spine of broken walls led onward, each stone scarred with scratches that wanted to be letters. I reached out, fingertips hovering, and the scratches pulled back, rearranging themselves into nothing. Emotion moved through me like weather. When the first edge of panic touched my chest, the mist thickened, grainy, static-filled, resisting light. When I stepped back from it, counting heartbeats, one truth, one step, one breath, the mist thinned as if it lost interest. One truth, one step, one breath. Wind slid past, bringing a scent of iron, rain kept in a jar too long, and something old left out in the cold. The horizon held still and yet trembled in its edges, as if it were stitched there by a tired hand. I reached a place where the ground remembered being stairs. They led both up and down at the same time, a trick the eye could argue with, but the feet could not. In the hollow, a heap of watches lay like a nest of ticking insects. I picked one up. The glass was cracked, and beneath it a second hand twitched in stumbles, hurrying, then forgetting, then hurrying again. It locked to my heartbeat. I put it to my ear and heard my own pulse wearing a different body. A shape leaned over me. Not a person, something thinner than that. A hesitation. My shadow lagged, arriving half a breath late. You're being repeated. I spun, and the shadow followed, uncertain, then precise. When I stopped, it took another half step and froze like it had forgotten which one of us was supposed to be first. I raised my hand. It raised its hand. I dropped mine quickly, and it faltered, losing the beat, fingers twitching in a pattern that was mine, on delay. I should have been afraid. Instead, I spoke, to give myself a wall to lean on. I am here. I am here. The air shifted. The mist listened. And somewhere ahead, a tone rang thin and bright as a wire. I followed the echo to a low archway of collapsed stone ribs. Beyond it, the world flattened into a skin of shallow water stretched over black earth. My footprints continued out across it. I stepped to the edge. The water was a mirror with bad memory. My reflection stood there, a fraction late, mouth closed when mine opened, eyes tracking my gaze like a predator that hadn't decided whether I was worth the work. You forgot what you promised.
The words did not strike like thunder. They arrived like a letter delivered years after it mattered, edges torn, half illegible, still suffocating. I leaned in. My reflection did not. It leaned away.
I stepped back and the surface relaxed, unremembering the moment. The watches behind me ticked out of order, and the sky's gray pulse kept slow time with something beneath the horizon. On the far side, a frame of doorway stood with nothing to belong to. Strings hung from its lintel, thin cords with small knots tied in uneven intervals, each knot a little bruise of thread. They moved in a breeze that didn't touch my skin. Whispers gathered there, each too quiet to be sound. If I leaned close, they would become names. I did not lean. Instead, I counted my breaths the way you count coins in the dark. 1, 2, 3. The world got quieter, and in that quiet the ground remembered how to be firm again. I crossed. Beyond the frame, the landscape rearranged its nervous system. Walls became alleys, alleys rose like ladders, ladders leaned on nothing. A wide plaza opened, littered with chairs facing no stage, all of them empty, all of them damp with a fog that wouldn't commit to rain. In the center sat a circular plate of metal let into stone, tailing thin lines outward like veins. It hummed on a frequency that made my tongue ache. I put my palm to it. Memory did not return, but something else did. If you stand here long enough, you remember wanting to leave. It wasn't a person speaking. It was the place itself, rehearsing a line it had heard many times and never understood. I took my hand away and let the world forget what it had almost told me. I kept moving. The plaza narrowed into a corridor peeled from old buildings, their windows shuttered with sheets of hammered tin. A child's drawing had been carved into one of them. Crooked lines, a circle with too many teeth, a stick figure holding another stick figure's hand. The second figure's hand was unfinished. The grooves stopped. The tool had slipped, or the memory had. One truth. One step, one breath. Wind threads through tin, faint and harmonic. I turned a corner and collided with myself. No, another delay, a thicker one. The figure ahead moved like an answer copied too slowly. It stood where I was about to stand. It inhaled when I exhaled. And then it did something I had not. It smiled. The expression never reached its eyes. There were no eyes to reach, only hollows where light changed its mind. I see you. The figure's head tilted a moment too late. I stepped left, it stepped right. I did not give it the rhythm. I broke the count. 2 short breaths, one long, then stillness. The figure unraveled and fell away like a trick taught to the wrong student. My heart tried on a quicker pace and decided against it. I let the panic skim me and pass. At the end of the corridor, stone had been scraped clean, a patch the size of a door. At its center, a palm print had burned itself into the cold, a print the exact size of mine. Me. I lifted my hand and hovered just above the mark. Heat rose to meet me, not warmth, more like the ghost of warmth. When my skin touched stone, a sentence surfaced like a bubble from a deep place. Do not follow the brightest path.
Light here learns your name faster than you do.
I stepped back. A blade of light cut through the mist from somewhere up and right, as if the sky had developed a seam. It landed across a narrow stairwell to my left and offered the obvious answer. I did not take it. Instead, I took the stair down, where the steps were a little warmer and the air tasted of old, rusted iron. The mist thinned because it wanted me to think I'd made a mistake. As I descended, the space between seconds unraveled. The watch I held began to careen, then freeze, then lurch forward to catch up. I paused and pressed it to the wall. It stopped. The wall continued. Everything around me moved on without waiting. I sat in the gap like a rock in a river. When time decided to remember me again, I stood in a different place. The stair had shaved off 2 steps. My footprints aligned to new angles. But my handprint on the wall, fresh, open mine, glowed as if heat had just left it. A thought slid into me like a hand into a glove. This place doesn't loop you because it's cruel. It loops you because it's learning. At the stair's base, the floor opened into a long hall where the ceiling hung too low, crowding sounds back into my chest. On either side, doorways gaped and made promises they had no intention of keeping. I passed one and felt joy coming from inside it. Not mine, someone else's, preserved in amber, still warm enough to burn. I kept my hands at my sides and did not touch the threshold. Further along, a narrow slit in the wall spilled gray light like thin milk. I glanced through. Outside, the sky wore a crack like a scar. It pulsed, slow, patient, indifferent. Each pulse tugged at the loose threads in me. One truth. I am here. I am not ready to remember who I am. The hall considered this and did not argue. Another corner, another corridor. The mist pooled here and held still, like water waiting to freeze. A set of footprints, mine, angled sharply into the fog and then stopped. Not faded, not washed away, stopped. Mid-stride. I reached out with the habit of a hand that had done this before and found the edge. It was not a cliff. It was not any edge I had been given a word for. It was the border between what I could admit and what I could not. Open. Nothing opened, but the fog changed its shape, bowed, perhaps, enough to let me pass my foot through to the other side, and then my weight followed. I emerged into a courtyard paved with broken mirrors set face down. Someone had been careful to hide them from the sky. In the center stood a frame built of bones of wood, door without door, gesture without meaning. Hanging from its crossbar, a lantern without flame, glass fogged from within. As I approached, the glass cleared, not to reveal light, but to reveal a memory of light. A voice came from inside it, not words, just the idea of words. It pressed against me and receded, the way waves touch shorelines and pretend not to notice what they take. "Who are you?" The lantern answered with a single careful flicker that was not light. I left it hanging. Some things here wanted to be helpful, in the way a trap wants you to put your foot in the right place. I turned
and the courtyard became an alley, and the alley led to a threshold of air cut into a door's shape. Cold rolled out of it like the exhale of a sleeping beast. I stepped through. On the other side, chairs faced me again, row after row, all empty. This was a theater that had never agreed on its stage. My footsteps refused to echo, as if sound itself had paid to sit here and watch in silence. I took 3 steps, and on the 4th, a whisper arrived from a mouth I could not locate. Pick a path, not a name. I turned, and no one was there. But the advice held its shape better than most things did in this place. Names can be stolen. Paths take longer. I went to the exit I didn't notice before, a slit of darkness shaped like a decision. As I reached it, the mist outside drew back like a tide, revealing a slope of slate that led down into a valley full of moving fog. Along its edge, 3 trails braided and unbraided themselves, mine again arguing with themselves. One was bright, the path that light insisted on, shimmering like a coin shown by a smiling stranger. One cut straight through, severe, efficient, hungry, and one was barely there, faint as a changed mind. Do not follow the brightest path. I took the faint one. It did not welcome me. It tolerated me. As I moved, the world closed ranks behind me. What had been vista became memory, and what had been memory became something else, a promise I did not make and still had to keep. Wind threaded the valley and brought with it a single, brittle sound. With each chime, the crack in the sky pulsed, and with each pulse, something in the ground beneath my feet remembered it was alive. I stopped and felt for the truth I had left myself, the one that fit like a key. I am here. I will choose the path. The name can wait. Ahead, the trail bent around a block of darkness that was not a boulder. It was a house-shaped absence with windows drawn on it by rain. As I approached, words appeared on its wall, not carved, not painted, condensed from the breath of the place. They said, "You promised." I reached up and wiped the sentence away. It returned, slower. The letters trembled as if they were ashamed of themselves. I know. The fog stirred, as if the veil had leaned closer to listen. It tasted the admission and allowed me to pass. At the valley's floor, where water remembered to exist only as a rumor, I found the end of the faint trail. It stopped at the edge of a shallow pool that reflected nothing. Beyond it, a slope rose toward a horizon that had been broken and put back wrong. I stood there, held in the teeth of a choice I could see but could not name. The watch in my hand twitched once, then gave up. Its second hand settled at an inconvenient truth. The last sound before I moved was my own breath, warm, human, mine. I stepped into the pool that reflected nothing, and for the length of a heartbeat, I felt weightless, nameless, new.
When my foot found the other side, the world shifted. Not a change of place, something more intimate, like a change of mind that happened without my consent. Behind me, light climbed the valley walls. Ahead, the slope waited with the patience of stone that had watched too many people forget. I will keep the path. And the veil, for the first time, answered with something like approval.